Welcome to Battleground, Texas. I'm Greg Grugan in Houston. We start with blockbuster breaking news as deeply controversial Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has been fired by President Donald Trump. Much of the nation still buzzing after watching Noem absolutely dismantled by wave after wave of bipartisan criticism in Congress, including new allegations and revelations of an alleged romantic relationship with a subordinate, lavish spending on the taxpayer dime, and her refusal to apologize for labeling the Minnesota ICE shooting victims as domestic terrorists. Here's a sample.
What we've seen is a disaster. Under your leadership, Ms. Noem, a disaster.
Either you are utterly incompetent or you are violating laws with impunity. You should step down from your position. If you don't, you should be removed by this president. And if not, Congress should impeach you.
You should be horrified by what the Department of Homeland Security did in Minnesota.
Noem's replacement, Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. Elsewhere, Republicans across the Lone Star State still on pins and needles after President Donald Trump's announcement that he would be endorsing either John Cornyn or Ken Paxton for U.S. Senate, and fully expecting the odd man out to step aside for the good of the party. For his part, Paxton declaring publicly he will not step aside even after Cornyn telegraphed new, more devastating character attacks to come. And still plenty of buzz about the record primary turnout across the state, a battle won by the Democrats who, at 2.3 million ballots, bested Republicans by 100,000 votes. All right, let's bring in my colleagues, longtime legal and political analyst Chris Tritico here in Houston and Rudy Koski in Austin. Rudy, pick your headline and speak your unique brand of truth.
Yeah, last Friday was just a boring Friday, and this Thursday was what? The post-primary political theater certainly is in full spin right now. No denying that House hearing with Kristi Noem provided some pearl-clutching accusations of sex lies and a story about go find my blankie. Her exit from Homeland Security, I think, provides a fall guy for Trump and an opportunity to reset the narrative on immigration enforcement. And boy, the righteous indignation from the people on the panel. Oh, I thought their heads were going to explode. Greg?
All right, Chris, what do you see as most compelling?
Well, you've got to know that the voter turnout, and especially in the gerrymandered new districts that the Republican legislature did, we got all those new districts that were designed for the Republicans to win, and the Democrats bested them in every one of them and did them at huge numbers. And that's got to be a scary look for the Republicans coming up in the general election.
All right, as we mentioned, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, so far at least, digging in his heels somewhat in what could prove open defiance of President Donald Trump.
President Trump said he's going to make an endorsement. Whoever he does endorse should drop out. I have a funny feeling you don't drop out under any circumstance.
No, I'm staying in this race. I owe it to the people of Texas.
Now, within the last hour or two, Paxton offering a sort of compromise, posting, quote, I would consider dropping out of this race if Senate leadership agrees to lift the filibuster and pass the Save America Act. John Cornyn is a coward who has refused to support abolishing the filibuster to pass this bill. Now fake news reporters and the establishment are trying to destroy me with misinformation, end quote. Okay, Rudy, Paxton with an opportunity to show his loyalty to the president, looking to leverage his position and avoid having his character excoriated for 100 days by Team Cornyn. What do you think?
Well, I think that all just went out the window, did it? Earlier in the week, I noted how you and I talk about it, the Texas Republicans and their long-running political cannibalism that's been going on, causing a problem with moderates and independents. That defiant post from Paxton was followed with a backdoor escape clause that you mentioned. Paxton saying he'll drop out if the filibuster rule is thrown out and the GOP pushes through the election reform bill they call the SAVE Act. But, there may be some hard deal-making going on, but in a political interview that happened with President Trump today, when he was told that what Paxton said, he said, that's bad for Paxton. So maybe some bad blood's happening, Greg.
All right, Chris, Democrats across Texas crossing their fingers and praying to the good Lord that Paxton stays in this race and finds a way to prevail. That's looking less likely.
I don't see it. I think Donald Trump is not going to endorse Paxton because I just don't see it happening. And when Paxton is left there, the odd man out, all of his fundraisers are going to go the other way. He's going to have any money coming in. He's going to have no choice but to drop out of the race, no matter what he does. And so this is his last-ditch effort to get something out of it for himself. But he's done. He's going to be out.
All right, Rudy, real quickly, you see any avenue for Paxton?
You know, earlier this morning, I thought maybe Paxton goes to Washington not as a senator, but as a Trump bureaucrat. But in this latest pushback from President Trump saying this looks bad for Paxton, maybe the deal making of offering him a cushy gig in D.C., that's out the window, too. So Chris may be right. It may be over.
All right, stay with us. Plenty more to unpack on Battleground, Texas, when we come back. Clean. After lying for months, Congressman Tony Gonzalez of San Antonio has publicly admitted to engaging in a sexual affair with his former district director, Regina Santos Aviles, a young woman who committed suicide last September by setting herself on fire. The overdue confession came on the Joe Pags Show.
Was there a relationship with this young lady who was working in your office?
You know, very, very direct, Pags. I made a mistake, and I had a lapse in judgment, and there was a lack of faith, and I take full responsibility for those actions. Since then, I've reconciled with my wife, Angel. I've asked God to forgive me, which he has, and my faith is as strong as ever. When you make mistakes like this, you know, it's never easy. It humbles you. This is what I think is important as well, is this whole notion that I had anything to do with her death. I had absolutely nothing to do with her tragic passing. And in fact, I was shocked just as much as everyone else was. This is my third runoff. I am going to win in May. There's no doubt in my mind. The fact that they threw everything at me, I mean, every nasty possibly thing coordinated against me, and we still had a remarkable turnout.
Now, aside from admitting he lied to his constituents for months and was in fact guilty of a highly improper extramarital affair with his direct subordinate, Gonzalez says he welcomes the House Ethics Committee investigation into his action and openly suggested that Santos Aviles killed herself because she found out her husband was gay. Now, not long ago, House leadership asked Gonzalez to end his re-election bid and walk away. Chris Tritico, you can't make this stuff up. Gonzalez finished second in his primary, and until we hear differently, is insisting on remaining in the runoff.
Yeah, look, and to go on the air on Joe Pags' show and suggest that he had nothing to do with this poor, unfortunate lady's death after having an affair with her, and then he attacks the widower on air, and now he's going to stay in this race. This is a Greek tragedy that couldn't be written this way. For him to think he's going to win this race, I don't know what he's thinking. He's done. I'm telling you right now, on air, he's going to lose this race.
All right, Rudy, you've been covering politics almost as long as I have. Scandals of this degree rarely end well. And even if Gonzalez won his runoff, doesn't this monster baggage put the seat at risk, thus the GOP call for him to step aside?
You know, Greg, I wish Chris wasn't so wishy-washy on this issue. You know, if Gonzalez loses the runoff with Brandon Herrera, I think it will put independent voters more into play. To borrow and modify a well-known debate retort from a former Texas senator, the late, great Lloyd Benson, Tony Gonzalez is no Ken Paxton. He's probably also not a Bill Clinton either, or a Jimmy Swaggart, but sure does sound like Swaggart there, doesn't he? Now, the religious hard right that is willing to turn a blind eye to Paxton's transgressions is not the same group that you're going to find in Southwest Texas. So Democrats are touting that their District 23 nominee, Katie Padilla Stout, got more votes in her primary than what the two Republicans got in theirs. Yes, that's true. But if Gonzalez is bumped off the ballot, it's going to have to be I think, harder to flip for Democrats. Greg?
Yeah, Chris, you know, with Speaker Johnson asking him to step aside, if he stays in, he's a pariah in Congress, right?
Oh, absolutely. If he wins, I don't know where he thinks he's going to go from there. He's done either way. He's not going to get anywhere in Congress after this. What committee does he think he's going to get on?
All right, stay with us. We are talking the serious business of insidious anti-Semitism on the other side of this break.
Welcome back to Battleground, Texas. The nomination of James Tallarico as the Democrat candidate for the Senate is being greeted with cheers and some jeers. The Round Rock Democrat today doubling down on his main campaign promise, posting, "It's time to take on the billionaires and their puppet politicians." That message followed a post from last night where Tallarico mentioned that, you know, he is his Baptist preaching grandfather and how he is trying to love his neighbor through public policy. Meanwhile, Republicans today continue to dig up and repost some controversial statements from Tallarico where he has used his interpretation of Christianity to defend his positions on hot-button issues like abortion and gender identity. Church chat, you know, it's gotten big in this race, and it's been said you should never talk about religion or politics at the dinner table. Well, the midterm election certainly ignored that advice. This latest swing into political spiritual warfare can be traced all the way back to the October 7th attack in Israel and the disturbing rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses right here in Texas. Now, I spoke to organizers of a recent event here in Austin about this religious divide and their advice for professors who are trying to navigate the turbulent waters.
We're not trying to punish or censor constitutionally protected speech or protest on campus. That is not what our organization is about. But we do want to make people understand what anti-Semitism is, how it manifests, how it's experienced, how it lands on Jewish students and sometimes faculty. And we want people to recognize and call it out for what it is.
Do you feel like a shift has happened, or are we in a stage of limbo?
I think there have been some shifts happening on the administrative level, but a survey that our organization, the Academic Engagement Network, did in collaboration with the Anti-Defamation League showed that 3/4 of Jewish identified faculty in the U.S. experienced anti-Semitism on their campus from fellow faculty, administrators, and staff. These are their colleagues. These are the quote-unquote adults in the room.
There are departments, entire departments in the humanities that have carved out spaces in which you cannot have robust debate about Israel or the Middle East. There's only one narrative, and it's an anti-Israel narrative.
So how do these university professors who were at this conference, how do they go back and be able to stand strong on these college campuses in their communities where they feel like they're pointed at as the enemy?
These faculty need to know that they're not alone, not just in Texas, but in the whole country.
And they're going to do it together. For example, our faculty are now, after the convening, they decided they want to organize a statewide Texas-based faculty and staff group to combat anti-Semitism on campus.
And think about it. When, if you think about anti-Semitism as both a symptom and an accelerant of a society in decline, of course, it's obvious that America's adversaries would seek to foment it and fuel it and exacerbate it here in this country, to create division, to destroy alliances, to make citizens more distrustful of one another, and really to harm the interests of the United States as a whole.
Certainly, no doubt, anti-Semitism is on the rise across Texas and the nation. Crime reports show that in the last 5 years, there's been a 500% surge in cases ranging from assault to vandalism to downright harassment. Greg, you know, now we have this war with Iran. That's only adding fuel to the fire, right?
Look, Rudy, I have long been staggered by the abject bigotry of particularly the well-educated who insist on conflating the actions and policies of the Israeli state with the millions of human beings across the globe who just happen to be of Jewish ethnicity. If somehow they are somehow genetically bound to the decisions, right or wrong, made by the Netanyahu government. It is absolutely insidious and indefensible, and yet it persists and is most objectionable among the legion of zealots who practice a sort of virtue signaling where they define what's virtuous and what's not. I can't think of anything less virtuous than blanket prejudice against young people and educators, or anyone for that matter, based upon who their parents and grandparents are. Disagree all you want with the actions of a nation that's been targeted for extermination from the very first moment of its inception, but do not project that hate onto fellow Americans. That's evil, and it always will be. All right, Rudy, that's what I have to say.
Not a lot of debate, a whole lot of rage. The political battlegrounds for this spiritual war, is pretty wide. The Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, he's heading up a pro-Christian religious liberty commission. The Dallas Morning News last month had an article that said Texas Jews are living in fear. And then there's that ongoing fight over a Muslim development in Epic City. Now, with James Tallarico's theological views on display, Chris, I'm expecting religion to be just as big as the economy in the ongoing campaign blitz that we're going to have going into the summer. What do you think? Yeah, there's a slippery slope, right?
That's exactly right, and it's because of the injection of the single Christian views into the classroom, into our politics, into our legislature, and by doing that, we are indoctrinating people into one single view, and that one single view is pushing them into the negative view of any other religion, and that's what's causing what you're talking about right now, Rudy, and it's wrong.
A lot of crazy rhetoric out there, right, Greg?
Yeah, look, and it goes, on the other side of the fence with the Islamophobia that's been fomented by the Republicans. I mean, I'd venture to say 9 out of 10 Islamic Texans have no idea what Sharia law is, and yet if you watch the commercials, they're all at home, trying to figure out how to avoid our courts and have their issues decided by some religious cleric. Just ridiculous. Okay, stay with us. More Battleground Texas coming your way on the other side of this break. So much to talk about, so little time. I'm still shaking my head at the barrage of allegations launched at Kristi Noem, not the least of which was the nearly $250 million taxpayer-funded advertising campaign she stars in, somehow steered without bids to her longtime media advisor's spouse. Not to mention the 2 government jets at her disposal, the alleged firing of a pilot who failed to retrieve her favorite blanket, and the rent-free housing in a residence reserved for the commandant of the Coast Guard. And just think, had it not been for the tragedies in Minnesota and the mishandling of that mission, she'd still be in charge with all those bennies still intact. Chris, what you got?
And the thing that really got her fired was when she lied to Congress about whether the president knew about the $220 million. She said he did, and he didn't, and that was it.
All right, Rudy, any final observations on your expansive radar?
Yeah, guys, I'm going to be looking for the moving van outside of the Texas Ag Commissioner's office. Sid Miller lost the primary. Nate Sheets made the big surprise win on that. He's promising to clean house. Of course, he's got to beat Clayton Tucker in the November race and all that. But regardless, if it's Sheets or Tucker, Square Cow, Mayflower vans are showing up at that agency. Greg?
All right, that's all the time we have. You can see the interviews or any of our past interviews by going to our YouTube pages, and keep the conversation going on social media.
All right, we touched on it a little bit. The economy still a big factor for the midterms. Tomorrow, we'll have a look at if the tabletop politics can serve up a Mace runoff surprise, and what a top banking executive says small business owners are thinking as the battleground in Texas prepares for a volatile spring and summer.
them.